I want you to get together.
On the topic of the Millennial Kingdom, I'm kind of curious where you guys found out about it.
Um, that's what I was saying. I was interesting that I said obviously as my content stuff has grown around, like just the almost the little places I've jumped to make different videos. Just when I first got on TikTok, I think the two subjects that probably got me here was I started doing like architecture stuff. I started like weird, like crazy buildings that make no sense to me, and I was just like, "What is it? What is this building doing here?" And this is not talking about like the Tataria stuff. It was just more like Art Deco things that are just like, wow, they really built that in the 20s. It makes no sense. And then I did that video about the Hoover Dam, and then as I was doing Hoover Dam stuff, everyone was talking about, oh well, the Colorado River is really the Euphrates or something like that. And then you start going down the rabbit hole of the Grand Canyon. And the Grand Canyon talks about either like there's either Hindu stuff in there or Egyptian stuff, depending on who you ask. And that's when I think I started looking at like the rocks and the stuff that looks like I said, the stuff out west that looks like something told me instantly, wow, something bad happened here at some point. Either this was like, you know, the Nephilim fighting with nuclear weapons or something like that, or like literally the wrath of God got poured down on this place. And then I think eventually people were talking about the Tataria stuff enough. And I was reading my Bible, waking up at the same time saying, I think the Daniel stuff has already happened. Then I see your videos about the melted rocks, the stuff about Egypt. I think when I saw your video about that California possibly being the original promised land, because those videos that you showed that California was an island, that really kind of like disturbed me. Like how are there real maps about that? And then isn't it is it Death Valley is below sea level?
Yeah, Death Valley, the Mojave Desert, that whole area is way below sea level.
So it's likely was an island.
So scientists are saying, again, slapping on the label of millions and billions of years ago, there used to be a shallow ocean, is what they were saying. But of course, it could have been a lot more recent. That there was some kind of river, but it dried up because of some kind of cataclysm.
Yeah, so I think I think a lot of this was just like it was the confluence of all these things that I felt like were random pieces. And then you're like, that's weird. That's real weird. That's real weird. And then you're like, it was kind of just like click, click, click. They all just went together. And I'm like, wait a minute. Now this makes too much sense to turn away. And then I think after that, it was like almost like I think after the first podcast we did together, I was already up kind of like going that way. But I think when you really start looking at the scriptures and I pulled out some more, all this generation scriptures from Jesus, it's like, that's why I said I feel like that's the strongest case that we have that Jesus already came back, because he was saying over and over again that he was about to come back.
Yeah. I mean, how much more obvious can it get?
I agree. For me, it was very similar, to be honest. And to be honest, advice that a lot of your work was involved with me also getting a better grips and understanding about just how far we could have been lied to about geography, let alone history, and that kind of fit a lot of things into place for me as well. Because I'd always been a fan of just looking at Google Earth and just zooming in on places and seeing what it's like in different climates and areas. And I've always wondered what the hell happened in northern Siberia, because it's just a wasteland of holes. It looks like it's been carpet bombed over a 2,000-mile radius going all the way across the northern strip, and it's just water's just filled the holes everywhere, but you look at them when the Tartarian research began to appear maybe about 4 years ago, and everyone was talking about Fomenko's work and how there's this ancient civilization of super advanced ether pulling people who were using these amazing buildings to power this amazing world, and it's all been suppressed, and it's all in Russia, and this Tartarian Empire was centered in the Siberian Russia area. That's when I started to wonder, okay, so something happened here, because I'm told from all these old maps there was a lot of people living in this area once, and now there's nothing at all. Like it's barren wasteland. It's a tundra at best. There's maybe the odd pocket of tribes here and there, perhaps, but these maps are showing cathedrals built in these places and cities, and where have they gone? And that was always in the back of my mind. I could never let that go in the Tartaria stuff, but then in the midst of all that research, because on my channel, that's what I do. I try and understand these theories that appear, these big ideas that keep coming along. You know, it was like flat Earth, Mandela effect, then Tartaria. So I kind of had to sink my teeth into it. As a Christian, I was never satisfied with the answer. It doesn't square biblically, really, the whole Tartarian stuff. It's and it also there are issues with the Tartarian narrative as well, which don't quite make sense as well, and it just never quite sat right with me. Something about it was off. And then Exploring Tartaria made this video about 3 years ago, and you could tell she was just thinking out loud, and she was just saying, what if the saints have already been here, just looking at all these Catholic churches, and what if the timeline's wrong, and what if we're in the little season? And then I was like, bam, I had to spend like 3 years just thinking about that, you know. And that's what I've been doing, you know, before I came back at the start of the year while I was still a manager at a supermarket. I was spending most of my lunch sat in my car just listening to people talk about this concept that history is a complete lie, and what if it's the biblical narrative? What if that's really what's going on? And there's many people who have been doing far better work for longer than I have, and it just got to the point where it's like, I can't leave this. This cannot be left alone. This is answering way too many questions. Far too much is fitting into place with this one concept. And it's an answer. It's a Christian, biblically grounded answer for the Tartarian question. And I just started talking about it maybe like 3 months ago. So you guys are, you know, Vital, you're way ahead of me on this one. And, you know, a lot of your work is what's really helped me as well. And I don't know why people don't want to listen to me talk about it. I'm just a rambling fool in comparison, you know, but I just can't leave it, you know.
Where do you think that name came from? Tartaria. Some people were saying comes from the word Tartarus, like the underworld, and that it's a fallen angel kingdom or something like that, because of all the statues of gods and angels. And they were saying that at one point there was some kind of satanic fallen angel kingdom all over the world.
I can believe that. I can believe that. I was talking about it in one of my recent lives. I was on a podcast just discussing this idea. And, you know, everyone talks about Daniel 7, the prophecy in Daniel 7 is like a rehash of the prophecy in Daniel 2 about the statue with the gold head, the silver and the bronze, and then the iron mixed with clay and these empires that would come. And, you know, and typically it's understood, isn't it? It's, I'm going blank here. It's Babylon, then it's Persia, then it's Greece, and then it's Rome, right? These are the 4 kingdoms, the 4 beasts that will come. But then I thought, do we have to kind of reinterpret this whole thing now in light of this millennial kingdom coming and going? Is there something else here, you know? So I looked into Daniel 7 and there's a weird sentence in the middle. I think it's Daniel 7:12. And if I look at the narrative, it says, before Christ turns up, before tribulation, there are 3 kingdoms, and then a 4th one, which is diverse and unlike any other kingdom. And let's say it is Rome, and they dominate the whole earth. Using your Pangea theory that the earth had no waters and was all connected, it was an easy thing to do. Unlike anything that came before, wasn't even given an animal as an analogy, just a beast. It was just called a beast with iron teeth and brass claws, you know. Is it brass?
Came out of the sea,
yeah, you know, it's just this monster with 10 horns and a little horn, which you could say was the Vatican. You know, other people theorize that's what it was talking about. And it was centered in Rome, dominated the whole earth, and built Romanesque structures, like in the Philippines, for example, these Parthenons that make no sense being there, and perhaps many, many, many amazing World's Fair looking buildings all over the place, all across the earth. But it says in Daniel 7, it's cut short because Christ returns. I'm summarizing here, I'm paraphrasing, but this is what the story is. Christ comes, cuts that kingdom short, and takes it off the people who built it and gives it to the saints. It says the saints get the kingdom. Now, people have always assumed that must mean they get to live with Christ in his kingdom when it comes. What if that's not what it's saying to us? What if it's saying literally Christ comes, takes it off the kings, the leaders of Rome, and gives it to the saints, his new resurrected saints, and they get to take over these buildings for the 1,000-year reign. So that's what I'm thinking. Well, it also says then afterwards, those people have the kingdom taken away from them, and then they have to live for a long time. Their lives are extended. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, we know during the millennial reign, people have longer lifespans because Christ is present on earth. We can theorize why this is. Is it because just his pure presence, being the light of the world, is just making people live longer just by virtue of him being here? And obviously you have the living waters, and let's say healing energies in these cathedrals, maybe, or whatever reason people are living longer, it seems like the people that had their kingdoms taken away from them and given to the saints had to live through it. They had to live through the entire millennial reign knowing they've lost everything. You know,
Paul, I got something good. It's funny because I was looking at this generation verses, and this, I think this relates pretty well. So I said, so this is Luke chapter 20, and this is the ESV, and it's starting with verse 9, and it says, and he began to tell this parable. A man planted a vineyard and let it out to the tenants and went into a country for a long while. When the time came, he sent a servant to the tenants so they would give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. But the tenants beat him and sent him away empty-handed. He sent another servant, but they beat him and treated him shamefully and sent him away empty-handed. He sent yet a third. This one he also wounded and cast out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, what shall I do? I will send my beloved son. Perhaps they will respect him. But when the tenants saw him, they said to themselves, this is the heir. Let us kill him so that inheritance may be ours. Then they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and destroy those tenants and give the vineyard to others. When they heard this, they said, surely not. But he looked directly at them and says, what then is this written? The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone, and everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, and when it falls on anyone, it will crush them. So literally it's about like they weren't being fruitful, and it's like obviously it's like talking right to these people, and they killed, obviously the people. It's interesting that I said it's so funny to think that like Jesus isn't being literal when it's like literally God sends his son to these people. They reject him and kill him. And you kind of expect God to react this way by doing what they did.
The interesting thing about Daniel, that's the perfect, it's the same story. God comes, takes everything off them and gives it to his people. So gives it to the saints. So maybe that is an answer for why we have this worldwide cultural architectural style everywhere. It was the kingdom built by this fourth beast initially, unlike anything else before, and it was the buildings were repurposed, given over to the saints. And obviously I imagine Christ would also have built his own kingdom around it too, and his own structures. Perhaps the Gothic cathedrals are his handiwork. I've heard Noel Hadley saying something like that, and maybe more was built upon it, but maybe the infrastructure was just taken away. And perhaps when the little season began, those people who lived through the entire reign with extended lives took the kingdom back straight away, took it back, and then started to destroy what they built to erase history and reset everything as we know. Because that's what, when I read Daniel again, that seemed to be the story, because it does mention, that once Satan's released, he would seek to change times, and everything. And this is what we're talking. Perhaps this is what we're really talking about. People always maybe attached that was just changing the calendar. That was just changing the day of the Sabbath, for example, and always equating it to the Vatican doing these things. But maybe that is true still, because we still have the Vatican today, which is doing a lot of dodgy things as well. But in light of this new theory, it's enlightening. It kind of sheds a more literal sense to the word than simply just parable. It's kind of, I don't know. I've talked enough. I'll let you guys go. But no.
So Vitaly, though, obviously, since you seem like you're the OG when it comes to talking about this stuff, since you've been doing it for about 2 years, like, so what finally got you on board that this likely happened?
The channel Conspiracy R Us actually got me on board. There's a video he made on the Millennial Kingdom, and that just got my mental gears going. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to find out everything I possibly can about this. And that's kind of where it started. But that video has been taken down. I can't find it on his channel anymore. So that's kind of what got me started. Yeah. Yeah. But it got me to read the Bible completely, like especially verses that involve Jesus talking to the disciples or anyone about end times. And every time he says this generation, this people. And I'm like, how else can I understand this unless I take it as is, right? Unless I trust the word versus having somebody interpret it for me. Oh, it doesn't say that. This generation means that. I'm like, it probably would have said that, like it would have said something else specifically.
Yeah, it's almost like when he was saying in Matthew 16, when he says, some of you will not taste death until you see the Son of Man come in. And it's like, oh, he's talking about John. It's like, well, then why did he say some? Why didn't he say one of you? When you see it in a vision, and I'll give you the vision, but not actually physically see it. And then again, I said I always go back to John chapter 1, verse 48. I think when he's telling Nathaniel that you're going to see greater things than this. You'll see heaven opened up with the Son of Man coming down with angels ascending and descending on him. So it's like he specifically tells Nathaniel, you're going to see this. And then in everybody else's interpretation, they don't mention him, because they don't mention him at the Transfiguration. He's obviously didn't write Revelation. So it's kind of like, then the cop out would be, well, he saw it when he died, after he died, but that's really not really. It loses a lot of impact if he was dead.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's a question people should ask themselves when you read the Bible. Like, if you read something and your instinct is to think the exact opposite, you should ask yourself why. Why are you thinking this? Is it because what you learned in church or what you've been told, or some other reason, right? Like, when I read This Generation now, I'm like, I'm just reading it like a kid, as the Bible says, right? Like a little baby or a toddler just reading, or a kid. And I'm like, this generation, simple as that's the people he's talking to.
Yeah, I think once you're willing to accept that this could be, it's like it is amazing, like, that you miss so many times, because like there's obviously been verses like that one in Matthew 16 that people have questioned, and there's these answers, but when you actually put all the verses together, it's like then you're just like, how did I miss all the other ones? Because there's so many that are there.
I want you to get together.